Hello out there. Let me just sip a little tea for a little bit. Give it a minute or two to see if anybody joins in. I know it's a Sunday night, but it is a holiday, so folks shouldn't be going to work tomorrow. It's a workers' holiday tomorrow, Labor Day. So we'll get started here in just a minute. It's been such a beautiful day today. The air is clear and the sun is so bright. It's just lovely to spend the day up here north in Michigan. Oh God, days like this. So, hi friends. I think I'll get started here pretty soon. First of all, I have a nice cup of hot tea. The evenings are cooler and it's a good night for a cup of tea. You know, I was looking at my last offering was in June, and it was such a cold night that I had a cup of tea then too. So if you have a cup of tea or if you have a libation of some other thing, lift your glass and cheers. Here's to another night with spooky or weird stories with Ms. T.I. Oh, that's good. That is an Ojibwa herbal blend that I'm drinking. It's quite good. So, hi everybody. It's been an interesting summer. I have had a lot of adventures this summer, but the one I'm going to tell you about began a very long time ago. I'm going to slide these over so I don't see those. There we go. It began a very long time ago. A story that I think most of you already know. It's probably my most famous spooky story. It's the story of the Roadhouse Saloon. If you have not heard this story before, I have, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is the same name, Ghost Stories with Spooky Ms. T.I., you can find me telling it there. You can also find it in other places. I'm not going to tell that story tonight. I'm going to tell the Roadhouse Saloon 2.0 and 2.0 A and B. So I'm going to give you just a teeny tiny bit of background. I know this may be boring for some of you that know it, but hopefully not. More than 20 years ago, probably more than that, no, about that, maybe almost 20 to 30 years ago, in the middle of the night, I was with my friend traveling across northwest Wisconsin, and we stopped at a place called the Roadhouse Saloon in the wee hours of the night and had a very unusual encounter there that with the mural that was in that bar. So this spring, please go to that story if you don't know the story to listen to it, but this spring, the weekend before Labor Day, I met with all of my sisters up north, up at our family place, which is near the Roadhouse Saloon. And there I had a couple of interesting adventures. I spoke about one in my last story, but the other thing that we did is one afternoon we were sitting around, and whenever my sisters get together, we always talk about spooky things, and we started talking about the Roadhouse Saloon, and it was brought up to should we go? Let's go to the Roadhouse. Anybody want to go to the Roadhouse Saloon? And I have avoided this place for decades. And just, you know, 3 years ago, it was the first fall of my retirement during the pandemic when everything was pretty much shut down. And my husband and I went to Amnicon Falls. On our way back, we noticed that the Roadhouse Saloon was open. And I said, do you want to stop? And he said, sure. So we pulled into the parking lot. We pulled up and we saw a bunch of cars in the parking lot and said, why would we go into a crowded bar in the middle of COVID? Let's not stop. So we left without ever going in. So this last spring, in May, the end of May, when I was there with my sisters, we decided that some of us were going to go pay a visit to the Roadhouse Saloon. And so there were 5 of us, and 3 of us chose to go. Myself, my sister Annie, and my sister Kate decided to go. And Mimi was cooking red beans and rice, so she stayed back, and Colleen stayed back. Those were the 2 who had traveled the furthest. Myself, I'd also traveled pretty far, but they didn't want to get back in the car and go anywhere, and I think Colleen didn't want to go to the Roadhouse Saloon because of its reputation. I don't blame her. So Colleen and Mimi stayed back, and Kate and Annie and I decided to go. Now, whenever I leave home, I always bring a portable altar with me. And so in order to, I knew especially that I was going to be doing some spooky work. So I went to my altar and I did some protection things, and I prepared myself to go, aware that I could be running into something odd. But it was the afternoon. It was the middle of the day, and so I was not concerned about being sucked into a painting or disappearing or anything like that. But we had my two sisters back as anchors. I put some things in my pocket as anchors, things that could not be used in a spirit realm, just to remind me of where I was. And anyway, so we headed out, and when we got there, it's about a 30-minute drive to get there. And mid-afternoon when we left, and we pull up, and it's this beautiful, bright, sunny day. And there are all these people outside. There's a pickup truck with a bunch of guys standing around. Looks like they're about to do some kind of construction work or some kind of remodel or something. They've got tools in the truck and some other things. And we pull up and park, and they all smile at us, and wave and say, "Hi, nice to see ya." And then standing near the door were a couple, three other people that were out for a smoke, and they greeted us warmly. "Nice to see ya. You just coming in for a drink?" And we're like, "Yeah, where'd you coming in? Say hi, and, just, yeah, thanks. Nice to see you. Well, enjoy yourself. We'll be in a few minutes." And I'm like, "Okay, see you there," So we opened the door, and the door was not heavy like it was the night of the early morning visit that I had there, where the door was really hard to open. This door opened very easily, and inside the bar was crowded with lots of people sitting around the bar. And it's a horseshoe-shaped bar, and we walked in, and the first thing that happened is there was a gentleman sitting right in front of us, and he turns and he steps out of his chair, and he said, "Would you ladies like to sit here so you could have 3 seats in a row? I could go sit around the other side." And we thanked him and said, "Thank you, but we're just going to get our drinks and go sit over there by where the mural was." We wanted to go see the mural. And we didn't say we wanted to go see the mural, but we said, "Thanks, we're going to just get our drinks and go sit over in that direction." And then we walked around, because people were sitting all around the bar, to the far end where there was a bartender, and it was a gentleman, thin gentleman, older, probably mid to late 50s, or else someone just, not as old as me, but an older gentleman, not a young person. And we went up to this gap in the bar and ordered drinks, and Annie doesn't drink alcohol, and so she ordered a club soda. And then he said, "Oh, you're lucky, because this is your lucky day. Club sodas are half price today. That's half price today." And she said, "Really? What does it usually cost?" And he said, "It's free." And we all went, "Oh, good one," we laughed. And then Kate and I were thinking what we were going to drink, and each of us has celiac, so we couldn't drink beers, which everybody else around the bar, so we decided to have a cocktail. And I saw up on the back of the bar a bottle of Maker's Mark, which is my favorite bourbon. And so I said, "I'd like a Maker's on the rocks." And Kate said, "I'll have the same thing." So the bartender goes and he gets 2 highball glasses, scoops in some ice, and then he goes to get the bottle of Maker's, and it's down, there's no whole lot in it. And he pours and pours and pours and pours and pours into one, and he fills it right to the brim, like right to the brim. And then he pours the rest of that in the next one, sets the bottle down, and goes and reaches down and opens up another bottle, and opens that up and fills that other glass. So now we have these 2 enormous pours of Maker's Mark bourbon. And I said, "Well, how much are these? What do we owe you for the cocktails?" He said, that'll be $8. And I said, $8 each? He said, no, $8. And we look at each other like, that's really inexpensive for Maker's Mark, especially that amount. He said, okay. So I gave him a 10 and said, keep the change. And we took our drinks, and I had to take the drink and kind of sip the top so that it wouldn't slosh out as we walked. And as he's making the drinks, the Spotify or whatever they have over the speakers, there's no jukebox there. There's no, I think there was something electronic you could punch in and stuff, but they had something playing, and it was playing Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. And when it came to the refrain, a guy sitting on a stool right at so the bar was here, and then there's like a wall. They had built like a divider between where the bar was and where what used to be the dance floor, and the mural was at the end of the dance floor. And the mural was the main character in my other story. So that's what we wanted to see. So he was sitting in this little corner by himself, and he smiling at us. Everybody's smiling at us. Everybody's saying hi, it's, just being super friendly. And this guy, the chorus comes on, and he starts singing. Instead of singing, how does it feel? He sings, kill baby seals. And we went, what? What? We burst out laughing and like, what the hell? What? And he said, you're never going to hear that song the same again. And we're like, yeah, no, we're not. So then we took our drinks. It was just so weird. And we made our way toward the mural. And it was across. So as I said, there was a divider that was made. But it had large open spaces. It had like these arches, 2 arches. But it did have a pillar in the middle. And it was clearly set aside from the bar area. And in that area, there were a couple of high tables that were homemade high tables. They had like a formica top and like a wooden bottom with tall stools off to our left. There was one off to our right. And then in front of us were, I think, 3 pool tables. There were several pool tables anyway. So there was no dance floor. And across there, that expanse of that room, was the mural. And the first thing that I noticed is that the mural had like a railing built around it. It had this raised area about 3 feet, probably 2.5 to 3 feet high area that wasn't big enough for a stage. It was not wide enough for a stage. It was probably 6 feet or so wide, but it was maybe a little bit more than that, but it had a railing all around it and then stairs on either side to go up to this area where the mural was. And it was so weird that it was like behind this railing. And the first thing I noticed as we walked toward it is that there were a lot more figures in that mural than when I had seen it so long ago. Now, I know you might assume that it's been a long time. My memory may not be clear about it, but when we were there all those years ago in the middle of the night, the reason that we noticed something was happening with the mural is that we counted the figures in the mural, and it matched up with all the people sitting in the bar. So we counted 1 to 1 with everybody in the mural and everybody in the bar. And there weren't more than a dozen. I think there were like 11 people in that mural and 11 people other than us in that bar until we started to appear in a doorway, the swinging doors into a saloon. And it was really surprising to me to see so many other figures. Where I recalled 2 people at a poker table, there were 4, and there were other people around. Where I recalled 3 people at the bar and a bartender, there were like 4. There were more people at the bar. There were people over there were just so many more people. There was probably twice as many figures in that mural than the night that I was there. And I can say that I recall being there, but I wrote this story down within weeks of it happening and talked about the correlation between the number of people in the mural and in the bar. So this isn't something that I just have conveniently figured out recently. There were a lot more people in that mural, and I mentioned that, and they said, "Do you think somebody is adding figures to it, painting more figures to it?" And I said, "I don't know, but I don't think I'm going to ask anybody," because when I asked about the mural before, there was just, people did not give any kind of response. So I just took that and we walked up to it, and just standing in front of him looking at it, it felt so disturbing. I felt, and I know I have history there, and so what I felt was, it wasn't fear, it wasn't anxiety. I felt really prepared to be there, something that I've learned through my 1,000 years in this, on this planet here, through all my years of interacting with spirit and with different dimensions and with all manner of things non-physical. The one thing that I learned is that there are two things that can be super dangerous, and those are arrogance and ignorance. And I was approaching this with neither. I had prepared myself with protections. I was mindfully entering it, aware that I was not in control, but that I was protected. And I had a lot of new knowledge about interdimensional things. So I am able to recognize those thinning places a lot better than I had at that time, even though I had experienced them by that time. So I was not arrogant and I was not ignorant. So what I was feeling was not fear, it was not anxiety. What I was feeling was energy. And it was like this vibration that was like between that mural and myself. There was a connection, just an energetic something between us. It was as if, I think I was recognized. I think that my energy was recognized. And anyway, so we decided that we were going to take a selfie with us there to prove to the world that we actually went there. So we were standing and holding the camera as far away, but it's a big mural, and I'm a big person, and so we took a couple, stretched arm selfies, and I'm not really good at those. And then the fella that was singing by the bar comes walking past us to go to the men's room, and he goes in, and I said, "Oh, we'll ask him to take a picture when he comes out." So he comes out and he starts walking back, and I said, "Hey, Baby Seals guy." And he says, "What? Wait. Oh, yeah, what?" And we asked him to take a picture. So he takes the camera and he steps back, and gets a picture of us. We've got arms around each other, and the mural is behind us. And then he gives me back the camera. And then I decided to go get close to the mural. I had not done that when I was there the last time. I had not gotten close enough to touch it. And so I decided to do that. And so I went up the stairs, and when you get closer to this mural, it just looks so odd. It's so distorted. It's painted in such a way that when you're up close, things look really weird and odd and distorted. But the further away you get, the more realistic it looks. So being up close, it's like looking at a pointillism painting. When you get really close to a pointillism painting, you can only see the dots. But when you move away, the image is clearer. So this painting was not a pointillist painting, but the figures were in awkward positions that when you moved away, it fit. Anyway, it's hard. It's kind of hard to describe if you have an idea of what I mean. It's very odd when you're up close. So I walked up and I held my hands up just off of the wall, and I could feel this hum that was like, as if it was like almost an electrical hum, like this constant, like if there was a beehive in the wall, and you could hear this of the constant humming. That's what it was like a beehive in the wall. I described it once before when I was interviewed on another podcast a few weeks back as like when you're near an electrical transformer, like there's a bunch of electrical stuff behind it. But since I described that, I think it was more like there's a beehive behind that wall. Now this is an outside wall, so there was not anything on the other side of that wall. But it had this hum of something alive, and it was alive more than it was electrical. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And I could just feel it. And then, being that close, first of all, the other thing that I noticed is that there was no swinging doors in that mural. And there were swinging doors that we were in, and there were none there anymore. And in that place, it was just color. Like the background of this whole mural is like dabs of different colors, grays, pinks, blues, whites, just to make this amorphous background, very cloud-like. And that area where the door was, there's nothing there, but as I went over near there, behind the players, behind the poker players, there's like this grayish figure, as if it was either being erased out or being filled in. There were several other what looked like emerging figures or faces in places in the mural. It was very, very interesting. It was very odd, very interesting. So we're up looking at this mural pretty closely, and this other gentleman comes walking up to us. And I'd had like a tiny sip of my drink so far because we went right to the mural. And this gentleman comes up and he says, "Excuse me, are you the lady in the story?" And I was like, "Yeah, how did you know?" Now this was weird. And he said that he had listened to the story several times, and he recognized my voice when we ordered drinks at the bar. And then when he saw us walk over to the mural and noticed I had a cane, he said to himself, "That's got to be her." So he mustered up his courage and came over and asked, and it was, of course, me. And so we spoke for several minutes, and he asked lots of questions, and he was very excited to meet me. He couldn't wait to tell his friend who had turned him on to the story, his friend on the West Coast who knew he lived by this place, and so he said he couldn't wait to get a hold of him and let him know, and just all excited about all this. And I told him about my stories and where to see more, and I think I gave him my email address where he could, if he had more questions, he could reach out. He hasn't, so I guess he didn't have more questions. And Annie, when he leaves, then he gets a six-pack and he's leaving, and he leaves the bar, and Annie says to me, "Wow, you're really famous." And I was like, well, here, like what Claudia once said, pockets of fame, and these are tiny little tidbits of fame, I suppose. But it felt really good to be recognized. And then Annie, it felt really good to have Annie say, "Wow, you're famous." So all of a sudden, my ego is boosted. And then we went and we sat down at this table, and the guys who had been outside to have our drinks, and the guys who had been outside with all the equipment start hauling stuff in, and they're going to be doing this project on this wall that's like right behind where we're sitting. And we're sitting around one edge and kind of watching these men start this project, and it was the most entertaining thing I think I've seen in a very long time. It was several guys, and it reminded me when my brothers do projects, they banter and they have a really good time and they laugh, and as they're working and doing the job, and they kind of tease each other about, "you need help with it," And as we're watching all this woman comes up, and she comes right up and she says, "Hi," and she puts her hand up for a high five. Now, when's the last time a stranger came up to you, sitting at a table with your sisters or in any group, and just walked up to you and said, "Hi," and high-fived you? You know, people come up and say hello. People might come up and say hello, but not usually, but to come up and high-five. And for those of you that know my first story, that was the first thing that happened when Bob and I walked into the Roadhouse Saloon long ago, is this gentleman came up and just whack, high five, welcome, you know, and so there was that high five again. And I didn't register that right away until a little bit later in the afternoon. So we're watching all this, and the job that these gentlemen are doing, meanwhile we're drinking our drinks, and they're going down really easy. Maker's Mark is very easy to drink. So is tea. And pretty soon our glasses are, empty, and we said, well, should we get in? Well, no, we were at the table and our glasses are emptying, and these guys pull out some power tools, and the job that they were going to do was to remove an old air conditioning unit and replace it with a new one. And so we're watching this job of them, unscrewing and trying to pull this thing that is mounted in the wall, high up in the wall. They're standing on a table, trying to muscle this thing out of the wall. And it was just really entertaining. And we're laughing and discussing how they're doing it and all this stuff. And then the guy goes to get a Sawzall, and that woman who had come to do a high five, he said, maybe we should move, because we were really close to where this activity was happening. And so we just said, maybe we should move over there, a little bit of ways across the floor, across the dance floor, to where that edge of the bar, that the wall comes in, and there's a table just around that one small wall. And we said, yeah, let's do that. And we picked up our drinks that were pretty empty, took a last sip, and said, how about we get another? We'll have one more. I want to see them finish, get this in there, because the air conditioning unit that was in the wall looked like it was about this big, and the one they were going to put in looked like it was about this big. And so we got another drink, and we sat down right behind that wall, and we are just so entertained watching this, and we're making comments like the minute-to-minute report as if it were a sports event, what they were doing, and everybody's watching, and everybody's cheering, and everybody in the bar is interacting with them and with us, and we're like the spectators at a sports event, all of us together, watching this work happen. And then they finally get the little air conditioner out and hand it down, and take it outside the door. And then it's when they came in with this giant air conditioner, and we're looking at that hole and at that air conditioner, we say, there is no way that's going to fit in there. There is just no way. But when they got it out, everybody cheers, and they carry it out. And so then one guy gets up there, and two guys are lifting it up towards him, and they're, muscling it up there. And this guy takes that giant air conditioner in that little hole and just goes, thump, and it fit like a glove. And we were like, what? That's insane. And I actually said, I think our perspective is a little off. And then I thought, oh my God, the perspective is off in here. The perspective is off in here. Well, right about that time, our glasses weren't completely gone, fortunately, because that would have been large quantities of bourbon, almost gone. And this gentleman leans around the wall. There was a wall, like our table was up against a wall, and he leans around the wall, and he is the most attractive man. He's got these crinkly, smiley, sparkly blue eyes, beautiful smile. He leans around and he says, can I get you another one, ladies? With this gorgeous smile. And at first it was like, sure, and all of a sudden it was like, wait, what time is it? And Annie says, yeah, what time is it? And she digs in her bag and takes out her phone, which is not on, and turns on her phone. And we had been there like 3.5 hours. It did not feel like 3.5 hours. And she said, oh my gosh, we have to get back. Mimi's going to have dinner ready, the anchor. And so I said, oh, thanks, no, we've got to get going. So we got up, took the last sip, and walked through the door with everyone saying, "Come again, bye," you know. And when we got in the car, it was like, wow, that was so great. That felt so good to be there. Those people are so welcoming. And I went, yeah, so welcoming. And it was like all this feel-good stuff going on there. So the first when we walk in, the guy offers us a seat. The drinks are cheap. There's this fabulous entertainment, just a banal thing happening that we're so entertained. We get our egos boosted. We feel this feeling of well-being, of pride, you know, wow, you're famous, you know? And it just felt really good to be there. And I said, that's weird. That's weird. And then we started talking about the perspective in the painting and the perspective that we had of the air conditioner and how things didn't look like they would fit, and then they fit. And it didn't look like it was right, and then it was right. And it was just really weird. And the further we got away from there, it was like the spell just wore off. It was all that thing that had engulfed us, all that good feeling that had engulfed us was, as we discussed it, was no longer effective. And we were released from whatever spell that was. And it was some kind of I'm convinced it was some kind of a spell. So, once again, made our way out of there and have another story to tell. So, on my way home from up north, it's a 10, 11-hour drive, and I was driving by myself. So Era knew, my younger daughter Era knew that I was going up there to do some spooky things. She knew I was going to deal with the Grace story. She didn't know I was going to go to the Roadhouse Saloon because I didn't either. So she called and said, when you're at a place where you have reception for a long enough time, call me. I want to hear about what happened. I want to hear about your weekend. And so I did, and we started talking. And I told her about the Roadhouse Saloon. And she said, that is so interesting. And I told her about how we felt there and how it was so, just how it was so drawing in, you know, it just drew us in 100% while we were there. Not in a dangerous way, in a really friendly, feel-good way. And as I was describing everything that happened in the weird perspective and the extra people in the mural, the new people in the mural, and or figures in the mural and everything, she said, you know, I wonder if that isn't like a fairy pod. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now, I know that sounds really like bizarre, but I have personally experienced fairies multiple times in my life. Fairies are nature spirits. They're called different things in different parts of the world, but they have very similar, the folklore is very similar around them, the world over. And in European culture, they're called fairies, in British Celtic culture. And there is a connection between this area that was colonized by Northern European people, and actually the indigenous people talk about the fairy spirits as well. But there's a connection there. And the places that I have seen fairies most is in that area, is up in, when I've been up in Wisconsin there. I have experienced them here in Michigan as well. But my first encounter there was when I was a very young child. And then I had two others with these these enormous ethereal fairy beings. And it made so much sense to me. It also, she said, you know, you have been invited in to interact with them before. And that was the first time when I was a child, how I left, I left my body sitting on a tree branch by the lake and went out and danced over the water with these ethereal beings, heard this music, and they invited me there, and then I was able to come back. And then another time when I heard the music and saw them again, and then I was able to come back. So they know me, they recognize me as I do them in those settings, and as I think maybe they are in this setting as well, only a different kind of permutation. And she suggested the possibility that there is a fairy group there, and that the wall is, that the painting is like a portal. Now, I hate to use the word portal, because when you say portal, it has all these negative connotations. Whenever you hear a portal in a ghost story, or a Ghost Adventures or whatever, those things in TV, there's a portal here, we have to close it, but the evil things are coming through. It just has really negative connotations, and so I do not refer to those places where worlds can bleed through or leak through or come through as portals. Those are gates, and I consider myself a gatekeeper. I am someone who has tended the gate from here and experienced the gate between worlds, between dimensions, realities. On this side, in my physical self, I am someone who has moved beyond the gate with my physical self. I have someone who's moved beyond the gate with my spirit self. So I've had multiple experiences through these gates. And then as she's telling this, I started thinking, oh my gosh, they built a railing around, they built a gate around. I mean, it's a railing, but it looks like it could be a gate around this mural. And are these beings, are these people, because they're people, they may not be flesh and blood people, they may be fairy folk, these folk are maintaining a gate and coming through and back and through and keeping this gate open for all these years. And so when I came back, it's a recognizing again and feeling really good there. It was being with the gate. And I started thinking how much that makes sense, and how that it's such a good explanation. When I've told this story before, just a minute, this little candle is burning the candle holder. I have to move it. Oops, I'm gonna turn it off. There we go. Sorry, I'm tending the flame. Gatekeeper and flame tender. There we go. You could still see me, right? I just turned the selenite off because this edges. Anyway, so that just made so much sense to me. And I started thinking about why, what could be the purpose of this. Now, I've thought more since, a lot since, but I want to tell you about the next time I went to the Roadhouse Saloon. Yes, I went again this summer. Only this time, it was in August, and my husband and I went up by ourselves, and then Ezra and his family were coming a couple days later. So on a Saturday night, my sister Annie said, our friend Bill, I told him about us going to the Roadhouse Saloon, and Bill and Debbie would love to go to the Roadhouse Saloon if you're up for going. And I said, well, Ezra's coming tomorrow, but we could go tonight. I always feel drawn. I'm feeling drawn there, So this time, the altar that I brought with me. Okay, so anyway, we decided we were going to go to the Roadhouse Saloon, only it would be a bigger group. It was going to be my husband and myself, my sister Annie and her husband Bob, Judy and Dave, and Bill and Debbie. So there were 4 couples, 8 people, and we were all going to go up and check out the mural at the Roadhouse Saloon on a Saturday evening. Now let me back up to my altar. I always, when I travel, I take a portable altar with me, and I set up an altar. And this time I took apart my altar here and took a lot more things than I normally take. And what I do is I sit with the box that I'm packing it in. I have this special box that everything goes in. And I sit at my altar and I just let the things come into mind, what I need to bring. And to the left of my altar, I have shelves that have all my oils and candles and some other tools and rocks and things. And on one of those shelves, I have a sweetgrass basket, a small sweetgrass basket with a lid that has a bunch of polished stones that are like agates and some polished crystals and stuff, but they're all smooth stones. And I have never in my life taken those with me as an ingredient in the portable altar, but I looked over and there they were, and I'm like, these are coming, and I put them, the basket of that, in my altar. Turns out when I took a lot of things from my altar, and while I was gone, there was a big kerfuffle upstairs here. And I'll tell you that another time probably, but my altar keeps things still, and when I'm not here and it's not here, things aren't still. And the twins heard it and had Ezra come over. They thought somebody was up here. He thought there was an intruder, and there was, but it wasn't a person. Anyway, so, but I had that basket of stones. So knowing I was going back so soon and feeling like I was going with more knowledge, not arrogance, but more knowledge, I realized that I am only one part of an equation, and that the spirit folk, the fairy folk, are another part. But one of the things that we each have is we have our own autonomy. And so I drew the symbol on my hands that designates the unification between the physical and the spirit self, to make sure that I had that. I brought some anchors, and I did my ritual protections, called on my angels and ancestors to just be around us and lead and protect, and then waited for everybody to get there, and we chit-chatted, we got in the car, and shortly before we went, I thought, I need to bring an offering. If this is a fairy pod, a fairy place, a gate where the fairies are keeping, I need to bring an offering. Something just boomed outside. It's a holiday. It's going to be fireworks. I needed to bring an offering. Something that I have learned in dealing with this wood spirit folk especially is you can go there once and experience it and get the benefit of it. You can go there another time and get the benefit of it, the good feeling, the good of it. But you need to bring something back. You cannot just extract that energy and then leave again. And I realized that the basket of stones that I had brought had the gift I was going to leave at the Roadhouse Saloon. So I opened the basket and I looked through the stones, and there was a stone about this big. It was rectangular, and it was brightly polished, and it was quartz, crystal, and jasper intermingled with it. It was beautiful. And at first I was like, oh, not, and I'm like, yeah, this is the one. And so I put that stone in my pocket, and that was going to be my offering. And so we went, and on the way there, I told the story of the original Roadhouse Saloon adventure encounter to Bill and Debbie, who rode in our car. And when we pull up, there's now, the place is not just the Roadhouse Saloon anymore. There's a 24-hour gas station in this big open parking lot. It's not really a strip mall, but it's a big open, a big parking lot. And there's a gas station on the other side. I think there's a diner or something because there were a bunch of cars over there. And in the far end of the parking lot is another building with a big sign that says Roadhouse Grill, but that's closed. That was not open. And then there were a couple cars by the Roadhouse Saloon. We pulled in, and the first thing I noticed was there was this huge bonfire behind the saloon. So here's the saloon building, and the bonfire was right here, and it was right up against the forest. It was like almost in the woods. There was vegetation all around it, and these flames were like 10 feet in the air, and it was big around. It was this huge bonfire just burning away, and the leaves on the trees were, waving because of the convection from the heat of the fire. Like the trees trying to get away. That's how I describe it, but it's the heat convection is the leaves all the way up to the top of the tree are flailing about, and this huge fire is there, and there is nobody tending this fire. So we pull up, and it was like, whoa, that's a big fire. Look what that fire is. And Ann and Bob get out of their car. Now, Bob is a retired firefighter, and the first thing he says is, somebody needs to tend that fire. That's not safe. So we're like, well, we'll mention something when we go in. So we go to the door, and I open the door, and the place is completely dark. The door's unlocked, but the place is completely dark. There is not a light on in this place. And there's a little light coming in from the windows that have the beer signs in them. But other than that, the place is pitch dark. And all of a sudden, sort of from the side, these two fellas appear, and one is wearing this really odd animal print long t-shirt, black and white leopard print t-shirt with a matching hat. And it wasn't like a ball cap. It was like those fishing hats that the brim goes all the way around. It's like a floppy hat. That's what he's wearing. And then there's this other guy, a younger guy who is very good looking, young man in a short sleeve shirt, and he's there, and I said, "Are you open?" He says, Yeah, we're open. Come on in. And he goes around to the bar, and the other guy goes around, and we're like, "Why is it so dark in here?" They said, "Oh, we haven't turned on the lights. We have to turn on the lights." So they start looking around the bar, all over the place. They're looking by the door. They're looking behind the bar. They're trying to find the friggin' light switch. These are the guys who work here. They told us, the younger guy said his grandparents own it, and he's been working there all summer, and he didn't know where the light switch was. So we couldn't go back to the mural because it's all dark back there. You couldn't see it. A couple of the guys started to meander sort of back there, but we picked a table right by the door, by the windows with the beer sign, so there was a little bit of light. And then Annie and Debbie get up, and they start problem solving. They're going to figure out where the light switch is. So we have this hanging light fixture over our table, and it's got a cable that goes up to the ceiling, and it doesn't go in the ceiling. It runs along the ceiling over to the wall, and then is running along the wall. So they're following where this cable goes and going all the way around and finding where these cables are all going to find the places for the lights. And after about 10 minutes, they get the lights on. And at this time, I look, and I was so engrossed in watching them find the lights, the hunt for the light switches in the dark, that when the lights go on, there are 4 or 5 other people that have come in and are sitting along the side of the bar that weren't there before, I'm sure, or unless they were there in the dark, I don't know. But they're all over there, and now the kid goes back to behind the bar, and we decide to just go, before we even ordered drinks or anything, we walked over to the now lit mural, and everybody's like, "Whoa, that is so creepy." That it is. It's just so creepy, and it's so bizarre, and everybody was super interested in it and getting close and getting photos and taking video, and Debbie took a panoramic that I need to get a copy of because I think I want to have that one for things. So I'll get in touch with her and ask her to send me a copy of that. And just checking out the mural, and I was looking at the mural, but more than that, I was feeling the place. and trying to size up the place and determine if this is indeed a gate. And I didn't come to a final conclusion, but I am pretty sure it was. Sure enough of it that I went up the few steps close to the mural and off to the right side of it. There was a power box, one of those galvanized steel power boxes. It's not attached to the wall, it's out away from the wall. It's like I don't know what they had, like they had some appliance or something plugged in there. Maybe that's where they had a music. I have no idea. But they had this galvanized steel power box away from the wall. And I walked up and I didn't tell anybody who was there with me that I was going to do this. And I just spoke in my mind. And I said, hello again. I'm here again and I've brought you this gift. I'm a gatekeeper too. And I pulled the stone out of my pocket and I placed it right against the wall behind there. And I said, this is for you. This is something that connects us each, gatekeepers, to the other. I left it there. And then I walked away from the mural and I didn't spend any more time looking at the mural. I didn't talk about it. The guys all were just totally drawn there and spent the entire time we were there over, walking back and forth and trying to, get a feel for it, trying to figure it out and discussing different specific aspects of it and just completely enthralled with it. Well, Annie and Judy and Debbie and I went back and we sat at the table and we got our drinks. And I was like, I had this urge to get some Maker's Mark. Now, I stopped drinking at the beginning, alcohol in the beginning of June. I did an autoimmune detox and I just haven't gone back to drinking alcohol because I like how I feel without it. But I had this thing, maybe I'll get a Maker's Mark while I'm here. I'll get a cheap Maker's Mark while I'm here. Should I have a glass of whiskey, And I'm saying to myself and to Bunce, and Judy just piped up and said, why would you want to do that? And I'm like, you're right, why would I want to do that? So I didn't. So we were all drinking club soda. They did not make much money off of us that night, but they did get a gift of the stone. While the fellers are doing this, Judy pulls out of her bag this electronic game that she has that is where you guess a word. And what it is you pass this thing around and it has this beeper on it that's a timer. And it starts with a slow beep, like beep, 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 beep. And you are looking at the word and you have to describe that word without using that word or without, and somebody else says the word, then you pass it quick to the next person who does the next word. And this was a really fun game. And as the time goes on, the beeper gets faster and faster. Beep, 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 when you run out of time. So there's this anxiety, and it was so much fun. And word games, I love word games. I'm really good at word games. And so we're passing this around and playing this game, and the battery just dies. And Judy says, oh, that's too bad. I think the battery died. It's not working anymore. So we're like, oh, okay. She puts it back in her bag, and Debbie says, I have this really fun game on my phone that's a lot like that, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's one where you hold your phone up, you pick a category, and you hold your phone up on your forehead facing out, and you can't see your phone, and everybody in the room playing with you describes the thing that the phone shows. It's like a headbands game, only it's an iPhone app headbands game. So everybody is describing it. You don't ask questions. Everybody's just saying, it's a this, it's a that, it's a this. And if you say the word, then you tip it, and the next word comes up, and you see how many you get in a certain amount of time and gain points that way, and then pass it to the next person who does the same thing. So we are totally entertained and playing these fabulous word games, sipping on our club sodas, and just having the time of our lives. And finally, I think it was Annie again, said, I'm getting hungry. We got to get going. It's getting time for dinner. And it was late. We got there about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And we looked, and it's like almost 7. It's after 7. And so we decided we would go to a restaurant that Annie and Bob knew of, a barbecue place down the road a ways on the way toward home. And so as we left, everybody's, super friendly, and we just felt really great, got in the cars and got to the place. And when we got to the restaurant, nobody came up and gave us a high five. Nobody welcomed us. The lights were all on. It was like walking into a normal public establishment. We sat down, we got a table right away, we were talking, and we started talking about how weird that place was again. It was the same thing. It was like, it just pulls you in. And probably, I'm thinking, uses our energy while we're there. And the better we feel, the better energy is coming off of us. And so I think, when I saw all those extra people there, my first thought was, oh my God, the mural sucked other people into the mural, oh no. But I don't think that's it. What I think is that the people who are appearing in that mural are appearing from the other side of the gate and are coming through and going back and forth through that. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but this is something that I have noticed. There are a lot more gates that are apparent in recent times, in the past several years. There are a lot more stories of spirit coming through, of weird things. People are becoming more aware that there is more to reality than just flesh and bone, that there are other things that exist parallel and in tandem with us as humans. And what's happening is these gates are becoming thin. And I have a thought about that. We share this world with not just ourselves and our fellow human beings, not just with other creatures, mammals, birds, fish, insects, not with other plants, animals, trees. We share it with more than that. We share this space with all of the living things, and we share this space with all of the non-living things. And we are at a point on this planet in our history where we are degrading this world at such a rate that is detrimental not just to all living things, but also to all non-living things. And I have a feeling, I have a thought, an idea, that the beings are coming through, reaching out to more and more humans to try to help us realize that it's time for us to stop crapping in the bed, so to speak. It's time for us to tend this garden. We are the ones who tend this garden with our hands. We are the ones who are destroying this garden with our lack of foresight, with our short-sightedness, with our arrogance and our ignorance. And the beings with whom we share this multifaceted reality, I think they're coming through. Not to help us. Someone asked me today, do you think there are evil spirits, evil beings? And I said, I don't think there are evil, but I think there are some that don't really care about us. And it's like to a mosquito, when I slap the mosquito, I am an evil being. But I think that there are things that are like, dude, figure it out, or we'll figure you out. I know that's kind of a dire message, but it's also really hopeful because it's not just us alone. We have these allies, we have these beings that are maintaining gates, that are thinning veils all over the world. People are witnessing this, people are experiencing this. We need to work together to tend our garden, to protect the land, the water, the forests, the reality that is this existence that we share with so much beyond what we can even see. So on that note, I will bid you good night. Thank you for listening. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. And remember, we are not alone. We never were. We are not alone. Be mindful of all those. All of us. We are all one. Cheers.